Thank you so much for coming out tonight. My name is Laura Florence. I'm the VP of Sales and Marketing at Gravitas Ventures. We're distributing the picture. It's coming out on Friday. So this is the opening night premiere. So I want to welcome to the stage a glorious director, Matthew Cooke, who I'm so proud of with this picture. So I want to introduce him and let him do a quick intro for the film. I also want to remind everybody we are doing a Q&A after, so please stay in your seats after this picture.
Hello. I feel like I know every single person here. It's like being in my living room, but slightly larger. Thank you guys so much for being here. This is a really special film for a lot of us, for a lot of reasons. Can I just see a show of hands of everybody who worked on the film or contributed to the film in some way? Right, it's the entire theater practically. For those of you who aren't familiar, this is a horror film, and it's a horror film that's a true story. It's about reality, and it also hopefully provides a little treasure map on some directions that we could take to get out of this horrific situation that we're in. It's also an homage and an acknowledgement of a couple of stories, true stories of our brother Bruce Lisker, who's here, our brother Reggie Cole, who's here, and Susan Mellen, and Paul Arquette, and so many others. So some of them are going to join us for a panel discussion afterward with our incredible producers, Jesse Williams, Adrian Grenier, and David Arquette are here. There's so many people to acknowledge it would take all night. So please enjoy the film, and we'll see you after.
So I want to take a second to really just thank all the cast and crew that are here again, especially from Gravitas, the distribution company. We really just appreciate everyone's hard work. This is an important story to tell. We're just so happy to be a part of it. Thank you so much, Matthew. Really excited. Okay, so let's take the opportunity to introduce both, again, Matthew Cooke, the director, as well as our moderator tonight, Elias. He will be just to do a quick intro, so you have done a lot, I think, in the community as well, but part of the Obama administration, founder of the Bronx Element Strategies, a social impact and justice strategy consulting firm. We really appreciate you taking the time to come out and moderate for us tonight. So I'll hand you over the mic, and then introduce all of our show.
Of course, and Matthew, who needs no introduction. Why don't you sit right here, Matthew, please? Have a seat right here. And next up, let's have one of our producers, David Arquette, come up, please. And then let's have Jesse Williams, actor, and also producer and feature in the film. Adrian Grenier, actor, producer, director, environmentalist, and producer of the film as well. Adrian, we'll have to write that down, please. Thank you. Susan Mellen, criminal justice reform advocate and teacher in the film. Bruce Lisker. And last but not least, Reggie Cole. Yeah. So let's jump right into this. A lot to unpack here. A lot to unpack. Matthew, you and I have spent quite a few days talking, so I had a chance to get insight on the journey and the process that took you to making this film, the documentary. Tell us a little bit about that. What was the journey, and tell us more, give us more insight on the process as well, please.
I mean, I don't know what more insight I have to give other than what we just saw. I mean, it's kind of like you see a house on fire and then someone asks, what made you think you should call the fire department? And I think there was, you know, some research and work that I was doing on short videos about criminal justice reform that led me to see that this story was so massive and so deep. I wanted to put together a film that just at least touched on a couple of topics that maybe we might all like to be exposed to. And then I had the great fortune of coming across Bruce Lisker and Reggie Cole, and it was an honor to just tell their story as best I could in the short time frame.
Thanks, Matthew. And David, so, I mean, all you have to do is look at the promotional materials for this documentary to know, obviously it features some great real stories, but it also features a ton of folks, influencers, creatives, and I'm sure you get a ton of projects on your way. Tell us why you chose this project and why it's important to broaden the network of influencers that are helping lift up this issue.
Well, I've always been such a fan of Matthew's and a friend, and we were just doing something silly, and we were talking about capital punishment. So I was before it, he was against it, and I didn't really think much of it. And then we had gotten into talking about the film, and then we looked at the film, and Christina, who really is, she'll be up here, she's incredible. My wife, Christina Arquette, did so much work out there.
Literally, without the two of them, the film would not have been completed. So just thank you guys from the bottom of my heart. On behalf of Steve DeBoer, who also should be up here, producing the program for the past 55 years. Thank you, Steve, and the Arquettes, man. It takes a village.
Yeah, so we just brought all our friends, and Danny Trejo came in. He was the final piece of the puzzle to really put it over the top. And just everyone who was a part of this film, everyone's in it for the right reasons.
That's awesome. Thanks, David. So, Jesse, I don't know how many folks know, but before Jesse started his acting career, he was a teacher in the Philadelphia public school system for about 6 years. Tell us a little bit about that, about what you learned, specifically when it comes to the school-to-prison pipeline and how that's influenced your advocacy in a number of areas, including the criminal justice system.
Well, good evening, everyone. Yeah, certainly teaching was, I wouldn't say it was so eye-opening because I grew up in pretty shitty schools myself in Chicago. So returning to schools, an environment in need where you kind of have these kids corralled into these four walls and convince, and punish them for not showing up and punish them inside the walls, and they're just being pumped with information that is not particularly useful, creates a pretty toxic environment. And in my advocacy work, there was a mention of somebody in the film tonight, and I thought of it, talked about got introduced to marijuana, and then it kind of was a gateway drug, right? He kind of went down a bad path. And in many ways, the way we police our students in schools makes school very much kind of a gateway into the prison superhighway. We have armed officers that are trained to enforce the criminal code, standing over elementary school kids with weapons. We have kids. We just did a documentary with earlier last year in Florida, macing children, handcuffing 5-year-olds, 7-year-olds, tasing them, beating them. I mean, any environment that you were in, whatever you do for a living, any space that you occupy, if there's an armed police officer standing right next to you all the time, that creates a pretty hostile environment. It's pretty much the opposite of a nurturing environment for school, and we're really good at throwing kids away for being truant, but not so good at giving them an actual incentive to show up. So that is all part of the pathway that Matthew did such a great job articulating in this film, that we need to pave as many roads towards freedom and equity and nutrition and health as we do towards being locked away in cages. So it's an ongoing process. It's a lot of fingers on that hand of injustice, and we're going to make sure we make it our life's work to lop them off.
Thanks, Jesse. And as we think about this, we've got to think about it in two ways, right? There's the front end. There's everything we could do, as Jesse discussed, to prevent folks from ever interacting with the criminal justice system. There's policing. And then there's the back end, re-entry. You got to hear a little bit about that. On average, 600,000 folks come back home every year from prisons. And Reggie, you were one of those. And you mentioned in the film that, you know, you were one of the first things you were struck by was how extensive the syrup menu was, right? Which was, you know, a kind of, I think for us, right, it's kind of a funny moment, right? And working with folks re-entering, I've heard many of them. I've heard, like, I had to learn how to date again. Busta Rhymes obviously gets very emotional talking about simple things, but you engage in programming inside to help with self-reflection. And tell me how those programs helped you and about the challenges that exist, more specifically in terms of re-entry.
One of the most important programs that I'm sorry. Hello.
There we go. There we go.
One of the most important programs that I engaged in when I was still incarcerated and fighting for my freedom was the Sada Yoga Foundation. And basically, it just helped me to accept that, you know, it's going to be what it's going to be. You're going to win or you're going to lose, you know. And in regards to the reentry program, I mean, there's a lot of different things that, you know, people could do with me, myself, you know what I'm saying? I had the help of my family, you know what I'm saying? That basically pushed me in, you know, to basically try to be a better person regardless of what happened to me. You know, education helped out a lot, you know what I'm saying? I read a lot, I mean.
Education.
Yeah, educational. Education is very important, I mean, to me personally, because like I said before, I don't know if I mentioned this, I'm pretty sure I did in the film, that when I went to prison, that I was pretty much reading on a, like an elementary level, you know what I'm saying? So I basically had to, you know, argue with my innocence projects to help me a lot, you know. The support system in prison is not there, but you know what I'm saying, by God's grace, you know, He made it happen for me.
Thank you, Reggie. Thank you so much. You know, there's a significant correlation, particularly among boys and young men of color, that the lower the third grade literacy rate is, the likelihood that they'll end up incarcerated later on in life. And there's also, on a more positive note, the higher the education that's provided to folks that are incarcerated, the less likely they are to reoffend. If you get as high as a master's degree, there's almost a 0% chance that you will end up back incarcerated. So the fact that we're not supporting more education programs still boggles me. And I want to also give, you mentioned your partners over there, and Michael and Justin from the California Innocence Project. You know, obviously standing back day in, day out, they're working on cases to have justice served, and here they are continuing to support Reggie. I also want to call out, if they could stand up, Reggie's family, who's here. So, you know, and I heard the gasp in the audience when Matthew laid out the fact that the same detective that was involved in Reggie's case was involved in Susan's case, showing that at all levels the system is breaking one way or another. So, Susan, I'd love you to talk a little bit about kind of the impact on your family. I know your daughter's here. Where's your daughter? Where's Jessica? Let's give her a round of applause. Most people focus on the individual, but when someone is incarcerated, it impacts the whole family. So can you just share a little bit about kind of what that process was like throughout being incarcerated and after?
Well, the day that I got arrested, probably was the worst nightmare, where my daughter, Jessica, she was 9 years old, she was with me, and Mrs. Wayne, or the detectives, kind of jumped out of their cars, and we were at McDonald's, so we didn't have a Happy Meal that day, but they actually threw me on the ground, and Jessica started screaming. She was hysterical, and I was crying, and she said, "You're being arrested for first-degree murder," and I just couldn't believe it. I was in shock, and so she put us in the back seat, but I remember as we dropped Jessica off, they were nice enough to let us drop her off at her sister's house, and I actually told Jessica, "Don't worry, baby, I'll be home for dinner." Well, I never went home for dinner until 17 years later. So that was probably the worst thing that can happen to anybody when you know you're innocent. And then the fact that my mother died 6 months after I got to prison, and I was pretty well shocked that my mom passed away, and I went to see my counselor, and I just wanted to ask if I could go to her funeral, and he goes, "Miss Mellen, don't you know you have life without the possibility of parole?" And I said, "No, I don't know. I didn't even know what it meant. I was in such shock in the trial that I thought the judge said 25 to life, but anyways, he told me I was going to go home in a pine box, that I would never leave the prison. So all I could think about is all those years is that I was going to go home in a pine box. My kids were never going to see me walk out of that prison, and knowing that I was innocent, that I'd be in a pine box, you know, their mom would be dead in a pine box. So that just, and it's still I process it in my mind, but just the fact of my children, you know, growing up without their mother and missing all their birthdays, and when my one daughter got married and she had my grandson, missing that, and just Christmas and, you know, birthdays, it's devastating. It was horrifying. And I know their little hearts were broken, and I can't really speak for them, but I know it was hard for them. I'd write letters to them, and I'd actually put my hand on the letters to show them that they could touch my hand, because I actually didn't see my kids till 7 years after I got to prison, 7 years later, because the money, they didn't have the money to come up to Chowchilla. It was so far, and it was just too expensive. So that was heartbreaking.
For sharing, Susan. I want to highlight Deidre O'Connor from Innocence Matters, who's been working with Susan and people like you, Justin and Michael, are again behind the scenes working on this. And you know, I do want to highlight a few points and facts. You know, at least at the federal level, there are fewer prisons for females, for women, meaning that they are much more separated from their families, sometimes across the country, making it difficult for mothers to be connected to their young ones, to their children and families. And we know this all too well, the statistics of family members, parents that are arrested, and then children that end up incarcerated, obviously go up and up as their parents are. So we gotta always think about the families and the impact of the families. And again, Susan, thank you for sharing. So, Bruce, what a powerful story. You know, I was talking to you earlier, and you're one of the most positive, upbeat, optimistic people that I've ever met. Yet, at every point in the process, you were hit with a roadblock. From the very beginning, when it was clear that there was evidence and another suspect, roadblock. Midway through, you have the unfortunate reality of losing your father, but roadblock takes another 4 years. You know, almost at the end, again, a roadblock. So share a little bit more with the audience here of how, again, we saw that the system is broken, and how that stalling kind of made you feel, and what that ultimately led to.
Thank you. Starting from the moment that you're arrested for a crime that you didn't commit, everything goes against you when it should be going for you. It's the world turned on its ear. It's black is white and white is black, and you're through the looking glass, and nothing that you do or say can change that. And so you begin to expect disappointments and sort of anticipate them. And so it's no real surprise for a prisoner when every single effort that you might make, excuse me, on your own behalf, even after evidence has come out clearly illustrating your innocence, when it's all met with, you know, the fiercest opposition by the Attorney General, by the prosecutors that put you there, by even the courts seem to be activists. I could read you some of the early denials that I got, and they're just so venomous. They just make a mockery of arguments that we made, as if there's nothing to them, as if they had no efficacy. And so, I mean, the courts are broken, the police agencies are broken when they're, you know, supposed to police themselves, and we know psychologically they just can't do that. That's not a reality. I at one point had so much evidence that a petition that we'd already filed years and years and years after I was locked up was already wending its way through the courts, and we obtained new evidence, much stronger evidence, as a result of the internal affairs investigation that was described in the film. The footprint, the bloody footprints that weren't mine. And we were faced with this dilemma of, do we move forward with a petition that's probably, possibly going to get some action, or do we take the time to augment that petition with new issues? And what happens when you put a new issue in an already ongoing petition is those are unexhausted issues, and so you technically need to go back to the beginning and start all over again with those new issues. And my attorney said, you know, we're not going to get the other side to waive the requirement that you go back and exhaust, and so it's going to cost you some time. And so I remember one telephone call from prison one day when we had all this fantastic evidence, and it was clear, it was just clear that I'm an innocent person sitting in prison to anybody who would take an honest. The evidence had, you know, was out and everybody knew it. And a system that allows that type of injustice to perpetuate once it's, you know, in motion. We need to look at this film, and we need to make some serious changes in the way that we do things. And it's a call to action, and it should be a rallying cry for all of us. I hope everybody's as inflamed and pissed off and motivated as I feel. After watching it, it's a beautiful, beautiful monster you've created up there, and you breathe life into it, and we had breaths with you as it looked at every facet tonight, and I just, Matthew and everybody involved, I just I'm humbled by what I've seen, and it's just amazing. I'm honored to be part of it. Thank you.
So, Adrian, I mean, you've been involved in movements, particularly in areas of, you know, climate change and environment, and you're clearly supporting this effort as well. Give us a sense of, you know, as we think about this movement and continue to build it out, how do we break through the noise, and what are some of the strategies that you think we should be thinking about, really building off of what Bruce ended his statement with, of getting this audience and other folks engaged?
Age, before you answer that question, I just want to also thank you and acknowledge the incredible time and effort that you put into supporting this process of not only this film, but the two films previous to that. These films, again, it takes a village, and every single person up here deserves, you know, a lot of thanks and appreciation. So before you answer that question, thank you.
Thanks, brother.
So this is the third film that Matthew and I have made together, so we've spent countless hours in editing rooms and having conversations a lot about tone and how do we reach people when there's already so much content out there and a lot of information that people may glaze over because it's just too hard to palate. And I think Matthew's done an incredible job in creating a unique style that I've never seen before, that really does manage to take a really difficult subject and make it new again and excite the curiosity of the audience, and also, you know, really boil it down to something that's very plain and clear. A lot of times you have, you know, rhetoric and spin that doesn't speak or doesn't meet the audience where they are in a very plain way. And I think we feel like we're sold to or talked down to a lot of the times, and I think these kinds of films that Matthew makes really just speak directly, plainly to our hearts, and gives us a lot of opportunity to take that information, process it, and then make it our own. I think this film for me is all about freedom and incarceration, and what are we doing with our freedom? That's what I ask myself every day. What am I doing with my privilege? We have the opportunity to leave our homes every day and go out and breathe the fresh air. But do we do it, or do we sit in front of televisions and allow the brainwashing of commercial television to tell us what to think? So I would just say I'm really proud of everybody who's lent their voice to this film, because they've used their position of privilege to speak out against something that's not easy. So I would say for the audience here and for everybody in this country, use your freedom to actually speak up against injustices, and don't just blindly take the rhetoric of politicians and make it your own. Don't let them tell you that there are people that you should be afraid of. These are our brothers and our sisters. So use your freedom to create more freedom. Thank you.
Remember what the film ended with. This is not a movie, it's a movement. So we want to build on that. And with that, we have time for a few questions from the audience. And I think we have a wireless mic going around. So if anyone has a question, please pop up. And while folks are thinking about a question, just again want to thank again the team, the folks obviously that are up here that made this possible. Steve, Christina Arquette, Gina Belafonte, Danny Trejo. Let's give them all a round.
Just while we're finding that question, Gina, thank you so much for everything that you do all the time, every day, with every breath that you take. You bring us into greater harmony, which is the goal. Thank you.
Anyone have a question? Doesn't seem like a shy audience over here.
I'm right over here.
We'll start up here.
Hi.
You sound like you can project, so we're running over with the mic, and then we'll come here to the front. That's all, Anne. Come on.
Hi. Hi, everyone. My name's Christine. Thank you so much for a film. And my friend Bruce's, I'm proud to say. Love you. I don't really have a question as much as a statement of thanks. This film reminded me, once again, in a really profound way, how we are all joined as and one and not separate. You who are innocent and those who aren't, we are still human and connected. And I felt that very deeply from the very beginning to the very end, and I appreciate that lesson. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Can we have Bruce's family stand up? I failed to mention that earlier, and let's give them a round of applause. And I know his wife is featured at the end. This has made a cameo appearance there at the end, so that was good to see you. We have a question in the front here? Yeah, try that. Mike is coming your way. Just 1 second, it's right behind.
I think it's pretty incredible what you all went through, and that you keep a positive light on everything, and the hundreds of thousands of others that are still going through it. But my question, which I might have missed, is what happened with the detective who was falsely accusing people?
So, yeah, we got
Justin Brooks, California Innocence Project.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Matthew, for this movie. And those of you who want to join in this movement, there's many, many stories that you go on our website tonight, CaliforniaInnocenceProject.org, and we're certainly not done with this. Mike and I, 4 years ago, walked 712 miles from San Diego to Sacramento to deliver clemency petitions to the governor on behalf of 12 innocent people, and he still hasn't acted on those clemency petitions that have been sitting on his desk. So there's so much more work we can do, and this is a call to action, so I'd appreciate that. And Detective Wynn is still out there doing whatever Detective Wynn does. There's very rarely any action taken against police officers or prosecutors for misconduct, or defense attorneys as well, who screwed these cases up and caused people to lose their lives. And we've seen it time and time and time again. The government sets up immunity laws that make most of them immune from any types of civil suits. Their unions surround them and protect them. The Supreme Court has set standards so low for defense attorneys that it makes those cases almost impossible to win. And even when you win a case and get somebody out on an ineffective attorney, it's almost impossible to sue that attorney because you should have filed that suit when the attorney did the bad thing that sent you to prison. So while you were dealing with all the things you saw in this movie, you also should have filed a lawsuit at the same time that was certainly going to be acted on, and sure, you'd have no trouble getting a lawyer to take that case on for you. So it's just another layer of the injustice and the impossibility of dealing with the system.
And Deidre, I think Deidre wanted to add something as well regarding the detective.
I also.
So Detective Wen is often common in these cases that these bad cops are repeat offenders, and there's more than one case. They have a career of long of doing these cases in the same incompetent and careless and even kind of purposely reckless way. So Detective Wen not only caused Reggie Cole and his co-defendant to be wrongly convicted and incarcerated for decades, but also Susan Mellen and other people. I've had another exoneree after Susan's case for a woman where Detective Wen used the same lying witness to get that woman convicted as well, also a mother of young children, and we're aware of other cases. But as a practical matter, she's been sued at least 3 times now, and with 2 verdicts against her, or settlements against her, and the 3rd probably coming soon, but has not suffered any professional consequence. She retired, and then she sued the LAPD and got a small settlement from them for some wrong that they did to her. I don't know what it was. But, you know, I know from talking to other exonerees that there's a real sense of making sure that we also continue to bring justice to the detectives that have caused this harm. And I think we should continue, as this movement grows, to think about ways where they can be held personally accountable for the harm that they've done. I know, like, people are interested in seeing if pensions can be taken away, if criminal action can be done, and I think we should all continue to explore those possibilities.
We have time for one more question.
I also have a,
Please.
so the detective in my case retired with full benefits and nothing's happened to him whatsoever. The city indemnified him in my lawsuit against LAPD and against him specifically, so it wasn't gonna cost him a dime. Nothing essentially has happened to him. He's fine.
One last question.
With what you had referred to as what happens to these detectives, not only has Marcella Witten continued to escape scot-free, the police are a gang. Their gang now tag team and come back to follow up behind the mistakes that were made. When Reggie was originally convicted by Marcella and her department, after he was freed, his freedom was not yet won. He had 7 more years where they tried to put him behind jail for 2 more times on a life sentence. Marcella Wynn was tried to be served. She hid behind doors and hid behind every law that they could use. It was out of jurisdiction. It was it'd been too long. At the end of the day, Reggie was rearrested by her same bureau, which was South Bureau Homicide. The case did not involve a homicide. In fact, there was nothing that actually happened at that case. It was actually found that the detective from South Bureau Homicide traveled all the way to Las Vegas. They made a cash payment to one of the victims of that day to make him testify in the trial against Reggie. In addition to that, he had been threatened to have his children taken away. He had told everyone and had repented as a conformed and a new man that took care of his family and everything since the incident that had occurred that first initiated that. During the trial that Reggie was going through, where he was once found 9-3 against, where they wanted to send him back to jail for life, we led a protest in front of the Compton Courthouse. The following year, all prior to him receiving any settlement, and along with Ms. Mellen and other people that were in fact affected, Reggie had a co-defendant that was also there. That Reggie stayed in jail longer to make sure that his co-defendant was able, for the California Innocence Project, to go up and get him out. Even though Reggie was free to leave at the time, he didn't leave behind someone that went in with him under the same circumstances. But these police do retaliate and do retribution in the unfair ways that I thank Matthew, I thank you, Adrian, I thank everyone involved for helping to bring this, to light and bring attention to this matter.
So the director directed and he said one more question. So let's go right here to Skip.
Skip Townsend has an organization called Second Call that does absolutely incredible work. Glad you're here.
Oh, here, I got you. Sorry.
Not long enough. No, you're good.
First of all, I'm grateful for the last two speakers to even speak about what is still going on right now. And I want to say that. I want to say that in the film, Danny Glover talked about PTSD. This film brought up so many traumas that I had being incarcerated, and I've been released for over 13 years. And by saying that and talking about LAPD having really not being criminalized for what they do, there is no such thing as post-traumatic stress disorder for Black and brown people. It's present. It's every day. It can still happen to Reggie. It can still happen to Bruce. It could happen to any one of us. So there is no post. They say post-traumatic stress takes 30 days for me to get over. I've been released 13 years. I'm sure in the last 4 or 5 years that you guys have been home, there's no such thing as post. The healing process takes a long time, and we're forced into a relationship with law enforcement, and it's an abusive relationship. And every day I come out, I don't know if I could be dead or in jail because of my relationship with law enforcement. There's no such thing as post. Thank you.
Building on that last line in the movie, you know, this is not a movie, this is a movement. I want to end the evening with asking each panelist to share if there's one call to action that you could provide for this audience to take home with them and hopefully share with their friends and family and all over social media. What would it be? Let's start at the end there with Adrian, and then we'll come down.
I mean, I think it's just, it's a spiritual one at first. You have to make a decision to, you know, step through that fear and really stand up, stand tall, and know that it's going to be a difficult road to actually speak truth and seek truth. But that's at first the decision to do it.
Thank you, Adrian. Bruce?
Choose love and connection rather than succumbing to the fear that's pumped around so freely these days.
I would say just pick one thing to focus on in terms of being efficient, whether that's pay attention to who the DAs are, what are the DA races in your local area, who are these prosecutors, who are they, and maybe pay attention to getting armed police out of our classrooms.
Yeah.
I believe this movement it's all about love and justice, and that I really think this movie was so great that everybody in America, I'm praying they watch this movie to see the truth. And there's so much truth in this movie, it's incredible. And I just thank you that I'm part of this movement. Thank you so much, brothers.
Before I jump on this side, Danny?
Yeah, you know, I really I was really honored to work on this film, first of all. And secondly, when we talked about second chance, you know, this is what we've got to do. And we've seen the film, but we've got to get behind programs that are helping. I have a cousin that went to prison when he was 17, got out when he was 55. And I honestly believe that if it wasn't for a program like Second Chance, a support system, any support system, I don't think he would have made it, you see. So we have to have not only educational programs in prison for the people that are there, but programs out here also. And if you don't believe that our prisons are turning into old folks' homes and mental hospitals, you don't know. If you go to prison, you are either gonna, I don't know, you either be a murderer or a girl, whichever, you know, pick one, you know, and it is just that cold. I love it. I love it when a celebrity goes to prison and they talk about how it was, and I did this and I did that. They were either paying somebody protection, that's prison, and people don't want to accept it. You know, you're either in a gang, you're paying protection. It's that simple. And I got another friend, my friend Sal, who did 36 years. And if it wasn't for his support system, he'd probably be back. And they talked about it. Mario, my friend Mario, got in a traffic accident. He called the cops, and he was arrested for armed robbery, kidnap. And because the guy that he hit, or the guy that was involved in the accident, was an illegal alien, and he was saying, well, he's trying to rob me, he's trying to rob me. And it was a traffic accident. Don't ever call the cops.
Yeah.
And it's funny, this thing plays out so perfectly. It cost us 35 grand to beat this case. And then our attorney came and said, it's gonna be dismissed. It's an armed robbery kidnap. But the DA is gonna refile it on you. Unless you plead to obstructing justice. Folks, that's a damn joke. We didn't have another 35 grand, so my friend pled to obstruction of justice. Got 30 days, what do they call that shit on the freeway? Yeah, community service. We used to go by and throw stuff. Hey. So if you don't think this can happen, get in an accident and call the cops and have a bald head, see what happens. You know, so I love this program. I love this film, and I'm so proud to be a part of it. And you guys, let's all get together and have a spread, because there's about 4 of us here that have done some time. All right.
And 4 or 5 here, and about 70 million Americans in the country have interacted with the justice system, have been incarcerated. So we have to stop acting like it's not there and it's not happening. It is. It's happening in a big way. Reggie, let's go to you, and then we'll finish off with Matthew. Call to action. If you had one call to action for the audience, what would it be?
One call to action. First, I would like to say that.
Hold the mic a little closer.
Hello, yeah, everybody is. I'm sorry. The first thing I would like to say to the audience is thank you guys, and thank everybody who's participated in this film. But I have a favorite saying that I used to tell my sisters, when I first came home, and that's that freedom isn't free. We talk about all the injustice of different stories of everything that happens to individuals, but it's an individual choice. Excuse me. It's an individual choice in coming to action. You guys see the film. You guys, few shed tears for me and different other people, but when you go home in your bed, that's the time you have to make a decision on what you're going to do, what you're going to stand for. We all did time in prison. I did time in prison as well, and in prison, you have to make hard decisions. That's how I teach my daughter. She's 3 years old. Excuse me, she's 6 now. But when she was 3, she had to learn how to potty and different things of that nature. And it's a decision. Either you're gonna be for it or be against it. You can't be halfway pregnant. You gotta be for it or against it. That's right. That's all.
Truth. Thank you. Thank you, Reggie.
Go to facebook.com/Survivor's Guide to Prison and join the movement. Tell everybody you can about the film. Spread the word. Take this on. I'm so grateful to everybody still sitting here through the whole panel. Usually you do a panel and there's like 3 people left and more people up here, and so it's just testimony to the fact that you guys really, as Jesse says so perfectly in the film, give a shit. So I'm so glad that you guys are here and we're all in this together. I think the last thing that I would say besides those is, when we've all heard that be the change you want to see, it's not just a philosophy, it's practical. Because if we don't have harmony within ourselves, we cannot have harmony outside. We will always react to that lowest common denominator of revenge and of being that which we profess to hate. We have to bring the light, and that starts from each of us all the time in a diligent manner. So I invite you guys to participate in that path with us. We can't do it without each of us doing that together, so thank you.
Matthew, Reggie, Susan, Jesse, Bruce, and Adrian.